Hey guys, it's Tealus here. I am back inside the Dream Grove bringing you another class specialization overview for a Druid. This time we will be looking at Restoration Druids. In this video, it will be the first part looking at the abilities and the artifact weapon of a Restoration Druid. And then in the second video, we will be looking at the talents, both PvP and PvE related. I will say before we get started that Restoration Druid is one of the, as I described in the very first video of this series, one of the one-third of the specs that really has not changed as much. I will go through removed, then changed, and then new abilities for a Restoration Druid, and you'll notice in the end that basically very, very little has changed for Restoration Druid, and to my knowledge will still function exactly the same way as it does on live. The only way it would not is if there were massive changes to mana costs, but I have not seen any indication that that is the case. It's difficult to compare the two because mana costs for healers in World of Warcraft Legion grow exponentially, so it's difficult to kind of narrow down and show the differences between the two and see if any has gained or lost any. I do have some generalizations, but overall that's something difficult to kind of monitor and to report on. With that being said, as I said, I will be going through removed abilities first, then changed abilities, then new abilities, and then lastly we will be looking at the artifact weapon for a Restoration Druid. That artifact weapon is known as Ghanir, or maybe the G is silent, it's just Hanir, the Mother Tree. So we will look at that last, but first we will go into the abilities. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. First off, removed abilities for Restoration Druid. This one will hurt a lot, and that it is Cyclone has been removed from Restoration Druid. I believe it's been removed completely. No, it is still in your PvP tree, but for regular, for the rest of Druids outside of PvP, you will not have access to it. So that really doesn't hurt Restoration Druids too much. Getting rid of that form of CC. Cyclone was useful as a PvE. I can't remember whether or not it actually had a function to where it actually lasted longer on PvP, on PvE characters, such as in a dungeon. I don't remember it having that, but so far, Cyclone is removed from PvE portion of the game. Ferocious Bite has been removed. Basically, any ability that is kind of tied to one of the other specs has been removed. There's a way for you to possibly get one of them back. As you can see in my shape-shifting bar down below, you can see I actually have Moonkin form, and that's due to a talent which we'll get to in the next video. But for the most part, most of the abilities have been basically stripped of it. I'm going to go through real quick and just list them off. Ferocious Bite, Frenzied Regeneration, Mangle, Shred, and Thrash, as well as Lunar Strike, which is a renamed version of Starfire. And I believe there's one more ability that I'm missing. I think it's Moonfire. Let's look it up right here. It is Star Surge, which technically Restoration Druids never had, but they do have the possibility to get to it, which we'll get to in the talent section. But all of those abilities that have been removed, all those abilities that you would use in different forms have been removed. There's a way to get some of them back through talents, but for the most part they've been removed. In terms of other abilities that have been removed, Genesis has been removed. That is one of the newer abilities that came to Restoration Druids. I believe in Warlords of Draenor it has been removed. You're kind of going back to your old roots as a Restoration Druid. That's kind of how I feel about how things have changed. If I did not mention it in the big kind of overview of abilities, Mangle has been removed. Mark of the Wild has been removed. Mark of the Wild was a kind of just straight stat buff. That's been removed across the board. Nature's Swiftness, that's kind of a big deal for PvPers. Nature's Swiftness has been removed, so you no longer have access to that. Soothe has been removed. You're no longer going to be able to knock a hunter's pet out of the way. Stampeding Roar has been removed. Teleport Moonglade has been removed, but a much better version has taken its place, and I will show you at the very end of this video, because it actually takes us somewhere else. So I'll show you at the very end of this video the new replacement for Teleport Moonglade. As I said, Thrash has been removed. Wild Mushroom has been removed, though do not worry. It's basically still there. It's just its name has been changed. Naturalist has been removed. Anything that was kind of a basic stat buff that kind of guided you into what your secondary stat was, those have all been removed. And then lastly, Primal Fury has been removed. Once again, anything really dealing with the other specs have been removed from the game. So, a lot of abilities removed, but really Genesis is the only one that really is pushing into your healing playstyle, maybe Nature's Swiftness as well, that has been removed. Otherwise, for the most part, you have remained untouched as a Restoration Druid. And you'll see this is more the same as we go through the changed abilities. Bear form has changed in that its armor has been reduced from 250% increase to 200%. Stamina increase has changed from 20% to 30%, so now is a 10% more increase on bear form in that. And then lastly, it no longer costs mana. Forms across the board will no longer cost any mana. So cat form no longer costs any mana, and travel form no longer costs any mana. Blizzard really wanted to make sure that abilities that really didn't need to be costing mana, they kind of just taken it out, and you no longer have to worry about that. So, Entangling Roots has had its cast time increased by approximately about 0.5 seconds. That leaves Entangling Roots to be about a 1.54 second cast, as opposed to what it was before. Healing Touch and Revive, their mana cost has been increased slightly. It's difficult to display how this mana cost has been changed and how things have increased, because once again you're dealing with a 1.1 million mana pool, as opposed to, I believe the old mana pool was somewhere around like 200,000, 300,000. So it's difficult to see that, but mana is going to be an issue now for healers. I know they've said that several expansions, but now mana really doesn't matter to any class in the game. The only specialization, that even had close to some type of mana management was Arcane, and they kind of removed that a little bit. If you've seen my Arcane Mage video, they've kind of removed that a little bit, and so that is no longer there as well. So mana costs are, heightened, and you're going to have to pay attention to your mana bar in World of Warcraft Legion. Hurricane is back, and I say back, it's still there. However, it's no longer channeled, and it just has a cast time of 1.8 seconds. So as you can see right here, I just go ahead and cast it, and then there's your Hurricane, and it just sits there. So that is a nice change to it. I mean, it really didn't make sense for a healer to have to actually sit there and channel something like Hurricane. Now they can actually put this up to put some extra damage on while still being able to heal. Ironbark has changed a little bit. Its damage reduction is increased to 26% from 20%. And if I were to take a guess, I'm going to take a guess that that comes from a, we haven't gone through the artifact weapon tree yet, but that's going to come from the artifact weapon tree. There's going to be something in there that increases it by 2% per rank. And then lastly, it increases the hot healing, the healing over time healing, by 20%. This is an enhancement that you were given in World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor, and it is now baseline for your Ironbark. Life Bloom now lasts 15 seconds, up for 10. This is a huge welcome change. I always felt Life Bloom did not last long enough, and I think they've been increasing it over time throughout several expansions. It has gone from, I think, maybe a 6-second time on Life Bloom to 8 seconds, to 10 seconds, and now 15 seconds. So they've continually increased it. They really want this to be back a focus on, HOTS, all healing over time effects. And you'll see that with the change in the mastery that they did. Prowl no longer reduces movement speed. This is just a nice little quality of life change for, all druids across the board. Prowl is still there, and it no longer will reduce movement speed. Swiftbend has been changed significantly from what it used to be. It no longer requires regrowth or rejuvenation on the target. You can now just Swiftbend whenever. I can go ahead and click it, and just straight there. It has a great Nourish animation that I love. And I was really disappointed when Nourish was removed from the game, but I'm so glad that they kept the animation from it. So Swift Mend is still there. However, a big downside to this is that the cooldown has been increased from 15 seconds to 30 seconds. So now you have a quick burst heal that you can use at any time on any target. You don't have to get a healing over time effect on that target to be able to use Swift Mend, which is kind of a big deal. If you're focusing your healing over time effects on multiple tanks maybe or something in a PvE setting, or in a PvP setting, you have your hots on certain targets that are kind of being pressured. If someone hot switches real quick, you can use Swift Mend now immediately to get them in kind of some safe territory before being able to apply your healing over time effects. So that's really a nice change for Swift Mend. The only problem is that it's now a 30-second cooldown. Tranquility has been changed in that its healing is increased by 100% when you're not in a raid. This is a big deal. So Tranquility generally still works exactly the same, but if you're not in a raid, its healing is increased by 100%, which is really nice. Wild Growth has had its cooldown increased to 10 seconds from 8. So once again, Wild Growth had its cooldown increased as well. So whereas Life Bloom seems to be getting its duration increased several times, Wild Growth continues to have its cooldown increased. I believe the original Wild Growth was just 6 seconds, and now it has been changed now from 8 now to 10 seconds. So Wild Growth still functions the same. Let me get close to these healing dummies. Wild Growth still functions the same. However, it is now a 10-second cooldown. Wrath has been renamed to Solar Wrath. Its baseline, it no longer costs any mana. So you can now spam Solar Wrath, it is now called, to deal damage if you need to, and it will not cost anything. So that is your damage component as a Restoration Druid. On top of that, you also have Sunfire, which is a new ability being added for Restoration Druids. It is now baseline for balance. If you've seen the balanced Druid video, it's now baseline. It's no longer, switching back and forth between lunar and solar, whether or not that dot will switch. Now Sunfire and Moonfire are totally independent of one another, and so they are there. And then Moonfire is still available to you, so you now also have 2 dots in addition to Solar Wrath to deal some damage out as a Restoration Druid if you want to. So, Living Seed has changed just a little bit. This is your passive that increases your healing. It now heals for 80% of the initial heal instead of 50%. Let me go ahead and bring up that tooltip just so you understand what I'm talking about. When you critically heal a target with the direct healing portion of Swift Mend Regrowth Healing Touch, you plant a living seed on the target. When the target is next attacked, the living seed will bloom and heal the target for 80% of the initial heal. The reason why they say initial heal is because they're in reference to regrowth specifically on that. So, just a massive increase in what living seed will provide there. The last major change is going to be your Mastery Harmony, okay? So the old Harmony, what it did is it gave a straight buff to your healing, which is kind of bland, and then it gave you kind of a buff to your healing over time effects. So what would happen is through Mastery, when you healed a target with a single target ability, then all of your healing over time effects would be buffed on that target for a certain duration of time. Basically, I don't think they liked how that functions, so they kind of reimagined Mastery Harmony. It still functions somewhat the same, but they've changed it a little bit. Your healing is increased by 7% for each of your restoration healing over time effects on the target. So if I go ahead and put Rejuvenation, and then Regrowth, and Life Bloom, then my healing from a Healing Touch will be significantly more. It's hitting for 109 right now, as opposed to what it could be. And as I let all of those drop off, we will go ahead and use Healing Touch again, right here. And it's only hitting for 91,000, it looks like right there. 85,000 right there. So that is a massive drop off from what it is. You're losing 30,000 healing by not having those extra HOTS on there. So that brings back the focus of, stacking your healing overtime effects on a target to make your heals more effective. I don't know how people are going to respond to this. Druids have kind of fluctuated back and forth between being raid healers, and then at times they can be tank healers. This is definitely a direction towards being tank healers. You keep all of your healing overtime effects on the target, and then you are able to heal a lot more through that. At the same time, I don't know how this will affect your ability to have a raid-wide heals and how effective they will be, because they have not changed the amount of targets that can be used with wild growth, so it still is only 6 targets. So your AoE healing, I don't know if basically what I'm saying is I'm not sure if Restoration Druids will now be used more as a tank healer or they will be used as a raid healer now. Things may be changing. If you looked in the Restoration Shaman episode, they're moving away from chain heal and more towards single target healing. So it may be that they're moving all classes now, all healing classes towards a single target healing mindset, so that everyone's got that tank healing mindset. But at the same time, you will have ability to do some raid-wide healing instead of having this system where, oh, X healer is better at raid healing, whereas X healer is better at tank healing. It seems like this is something that they are trying to fix and make a little bit different from what it is now. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and look at the brand new abilities. I already discussed that Sunfire is a new ability that is open to Restoration Druids. Let's take a look at Revitalize. This is your Mass Resurrection. Basically, Mass Resurrection was given to all healers now. They now have different names. For a Restoration Druid, it's known as Revitalize. It does not have a kind of debuff anymore, and that's kind of the trade-off. No longer can anyone use Mass Resurrection, but at the same time, you no longer have that debuff, and that's really a quality of life change for PvE raiders. Now, as long as, maybe a Soul Stone is on a healer will always be able to get the raid up and going as quickly as possible, and you'll be able to progress quickly into getting set up for the next boss run, or the next boss attempt. The next ability to look at is Innervate. Innervate is back, and it is now available to both Balanced Druids and Restoration Druids. I don't think it's available to the other, the more melee-centric. No, it is just towards the intellect-using Druid specializations. Innervate, infuse a friendly healer with energy, allowing them to cast spells without costing mana for 10 seconds. As you can see, I cannot use this on myself. Oh, I can use it on myself. I did not know that. So, Innervate can be cast on yourself, which allows you to heal a ton without costing any mana. So if you need to really burst someone up, you can pop Innervate on yourself. You can also use Innervate on other targets. Do you know that Balanced Druids also have that? So if you need Innervate from another Balanced Druid, you can use that as well. So definitely a boon there for Restoration Druids to be able to have that ability to mitigate some mana costs through the use of Innervate. Next ability here is Efflorescence. The name sounds familiar, and it functions very much like it used to. And I believe, quick review in history, it used to be every time you use Swiftmen, you would gain Efflorescence, which would put that AoE heal on the ground. Everyone was really irritated because they could not control where that heal was very effectively, and so that became Wild Mushroom Heal. And then in response to that, they decided to go ahead and just get rid of Wild Mushroom and instead just call it Efflorescence. So if you remember Wild Mushroom, it technically is still here. It's just now called Efflorescence. That's what I meant when basically it received a name change. So Efflorescence is still here. You can even still see the little wild mushroom in the middle of it, and it actually says Efflorescence here, which is kind of funny. So your healing is still there as Efflorescence. You can only have one up at a time, so it will disappear when a new one pops up, and you'll get the healing off of it just fine. In fact, actually, why don't we test this here just to be sure. I'm going to put HOTS on this target right here, and I believe those were the only hots I had on the target. And I will use this, and it's 109,000, so it will not, even though it's kind of a healing over time effect, it does not affect what your mastery will be able to do on the target. So, with that being said, we have two new baseline abilities coming in from the talent tree. First is Ursol's Vortex. Ursol's Vortex was kind of an escape ability, an item to escape. As a Restoration Druid, this is going to be more focused towards PvP players. But there's Ursol's Vortex. It is back. It is still 1 minute cooldown. But it is now baseline for Restoration Druids. Even Balanced Druids do not have access to Ursol's Vortex. And then lastly, the last new ability that you have is a passive, and it was a talent, and it is Isira's Gift, if I pronounced that correctly. Heals you for 3% of your maximum health every 5 seconds. If you're at full health, a random nearby injured ally will be healed instead. So, this is definitely something that is nice to have in the toolkit for a Restoration Druid. So really nothing has really changed as a Restoration Druid. They have put more of a focus on some single target healing, making sure that you have all of your hots up on a certain target so that you can do as much healing as possible. But for the most part, Restoration Druids are going to feel very similar to how they are on live. So if you really like how they are functioning on live, I would not worry. Now I will say, being able to have all of those hots on yourself, for instance, and having that increased healing from these spells, especially something like Swiftmen being instant cast, it's going to make it's kind of going to make, in my opinion, a Restoration Druid very difficult to kill in PvP again. Back to the old days in which a Restoration Druid was very difficult to track down and kill, especially when all of their forms no longer cost any mana as well. And we'll get into that more when we get into the PvE and PvE talents, but that's just something to take note of. So, with that all being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the artifact weapon. First off, we have the ability, which is the Essence of the Anir, or Ganir, which you 1.5 minute cooldown. You release natural power within Ganir to, I'm just going to call it Ganir, to increase the frequency that all of your heal over time effects heal allies by 100% for 8 seconds. So this is really cool. Let's go ahead and do this and just put what we can on targets, and then we'll use Essence of Ganir here, and then you'll see them ticking faster, which is pretty cool. So in a way, this somewhat, I believe, takes from Genesis a little bit. Genesis really only affected rejuvenation. This will affect all of them. So this is kind of like a burst heal if you really need it. So if you're raid healing and you're just going to put rejuvenation on everybody, maybe, you know, Essence of Ganir is your way of getting the whole raid up really quickly again, which is something that's really powerful. Does not consume anything. It increases the heal that you have very quickly for that. So it's really an interesting ability and something to look for there that you can actually use. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the artifact weapon. Now, as with all artifact weapons, you will start right here in one place, the Essence of the Ganir, which is your ability. The only time this has not been the case, I have not actually done my Beast Mastery video, but you will see before this video actually comes out that the Beast Mastery actually is the first artifact weapon in which the base ability that you first get is not an ability, it's actually passive. But most of the first item that you get in your restoration, in your artifact weapon, excuse me, will be an ability that you get. And then you get all of these different talent tree options throughout them. And then the epic portraits are kind of specialty items that come with your artifact weapon. So I'm going to go ahead and read them off from left to right here. First, we have Nature's Vigor, increases the healing and rejuvenation by 15%. We have Grove Walker, increases the healing over time you do by 3%. 3 ranks, so that's going to be 1% per rank. You have Natural Mending, increases the healing done by Swiftmen by 30%. Once again, 3 ranks, so 10, 20, 30. You have Infusion of Nature, reduces the mana cost of wild growth by 10%. You have Persistence, increases the duration of Moonfire, Rejuvenation, and Sunfire by 3 seconds. So I believe it was a passive in Warlords of Draenor to increase the duration of Rejuvenation from 15 to 18 seconds. Now you actually have to talent into it to get that 3 seconds back. Down here at the bottom, we have the first of the big options, which is Power of the Archdruid. Wild Growth has a 25% chance to cause your next rejuvenation or regrowth to apply 2 additional allies within 15 to also apply to 2 additional allies within 15 yards of target. Let's see if we can actually get this to work. Wild Growth. So Wild Growth is going to be the one that actually does this, and we'll just see if we can get this to actually activate here. Unfortunately, Wild Growth has its cooldown. Now, I really miss the days in which Wild Growth had no cooldown. Or I believe, excuse me, when Wild Growth was instant cast. One of the two. I definitely did use a Restoration Shaman. It was a few expansions ago, and that was really at the height of Wild Growth. I cannot seem to get this, but I will keep attempting to try and get it, and so that we can actually see. We have Knowledge of the Ancients, which increases your mana regeneration by 6%. And there it is right there. Okay, so now we're going to see Power of the Archdruid. I'm going to go ahead and use Regrowth right there, and as you can see, it hit all 3 targets, because it hit the main one, and then it hit the other 3 as well. So that's something to look out for. So, sorry for the little detour back to that, but back to this, we have Knowledge of the Ancients, increases your mana regeneration by 6%, 3 ranks, 2% per rank. You have Seeds of the World Tree. Living Seed heals for an initial 30% of the initial heal which planted. So there's where that initial 30% is. You originally start off with 50%, which is the way it is on live, and then the artifact weapon, once you get here, rank 3 of 3 will get you 30% extra, so that's 10% per rank. Here we have Blooms of the Ganyer, increases the bloom healing from Life Bloom by 50%. We have Nature's Essence. Wild Growth instantly heals its targets for 12,000 healing. Just to put it in perspective of how much you get 60,000 healing over 7 seconds, so the extra 12,000 puts it a little bit more. You get the instant healing out of that. You see the 12k, and then you see the 9k ticks out of it for the next 7 seconds as it decreases, as is per Wild Growth, and it's declining over its duration. So, with that, we have Essence of Nordrassil. Increases the healing done by efflorescence by 15%. We have Armor of the Ancients. 3 ranks there. Ironbark reduces damage taken by the target by an additional 6%. That's exactly as I said earlier as I was going over Ironbark. 2% per rank. Mark of Shifting. While in travel form, cat form, moonkin form, or bear form, you heal for 1% of your maximum health every 3 seconds. So that's pretty powerful to have, especially when we were talking about the return to stacking hots on a certain character and it being able to heal more, and then you can run away. Restoration Druids could become a very big pain to deal with once again in PvP. Very mobile. We have a Dreamwalker, which is the second of these 3 kind of epic portraits. Wild Growth has a chance to momentarily shift your mind into the Emerald Dream, instantly healing your allies affected by your rejuvenation by 32,000. This is another thing that I do not think I will be able to get to happen, but we will try. And actually it did it right there. It was 34,000 on that healing right there. You can see in my chat window it says Nature's Essence. Did it? I'm not quite sure. Nature's Essence is something else. So that is going to be something that will be difficult for me to actually test, but Dreamwalker, it does have that ability. So when you're using this kind of, what I'm noticing here is that this kind of plays into giving you some raid healing potential, and that making sure that you have rejuvenation on targets across your raid, and then when you use Wild Growth, you have the ability to even heal them more through this Dreamwalker talent. Here we have Blessing of the World Tree, increases healing done by Healing Touch and initial healing done by Regrowth by 10%. And then lastly we have Tranquil Mind, increases healing done by Tranquility by 20%, is now castable while moving. I did not realize that. So we can go ahead and use this here, and as you can see, I can move if need be. So if you're in a raid situation in which you're trying to escape and people are dying all around you, you're able to cast Tranquility and run at the same time, which is very useful and helpful. So that is everything for the artifact weapon in a Restoration Druid. Before we go, I'm going to show you what the new Teleport Moonglade is going to look like. It is called Dreamwalk. You will actually start out with Teleport Moonglade, and then when you get to when you start doing the quest to actually get to your class order hall, get your artifact weapon, you will get Dreamwalk. So we'll go ahead and use this here. I kind of kneel down, and the moon starts doing its eclipse thing here, and we're gonna go ahead and pour it out, and you will see how it functions. So now I'm in the Emerald Dreamway. I'm actually in the Emerald Dream. And I'm going to pull this map up so you can see, whoops, I want to pull the map up if I can. I've forgotten if I can make it larger. There we go. I thought I could make it larger. Must have misclicked there. As you can see on this map, I have access to the Dream Grove, which is where we were doing our kind of where we were looking at all the new abilities and the artifact weapons. But as you can see now, I actually have access to Moonglade, I have access to Duskwood, I have access to Hinterlands, Mount Hyjal, Faralos, and Grizzly Hills. So realistically, Druids now almost have as much mobility around to get around Azeroth as a mage. You have having access to basically all the corners, Grizzly Hills, Faralos. If you're Alliance, this is a big thing to have be able to have access to Faralos. That'll get you to a section of the world that's kind of difficult to achieve normally. You have Mount Hyjal, which normally you can get through with Stormwind's Portal, but you also have Hinterlands, which is another one that's not easy to get to. And then if you are a Horde, being able to get to Duskwood would also be something that is not necessarily within your reach. So it's really nice to have this this kind of Dream Grove place. And as you can see, all these portals around here allow you to teleport to the different areas. So that's everything for Restoration Druids. This is way longer than I expected, considering that there were very little has changed in the playstyle of Restoration Druids. However, there were a lot of changes to abilities, little minor changes here and there that we needed to go through. So, in the next video, we'll look at the PvE and PvP talents. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next. Tearless out.